Every day, the most powerful companies on Earth make a choice. Not what to say. What to never, ever say. And that silence, calculated, engineered, weaponized, is quietly reshaping your reality in ways most people never notice. I want to show you something. Right now, somewhere in Silicon Valley, a decision was just made about what you're not allowed to know. This is the story of how silence became the most dangerous weapon tech companies ever built. And why you're already living inside it. Let's go back. Not far. Just to 2014, when Facebook conducted an experiment on nearly 700,000 users without telling a single one of them. They secretly manipulated what 700,000 people saw in their news feeds to study emotional contagion. To see if they could make people sad, on purpose. And when it was discovered, Facebook said almost nothing. A tiny, carefully buried statement in a minor academic journal. That's it. No press conference. No apology tour. No CEO walking out in front of cameras with answers. Just silence. Controlled, strategic silence. Here's the thing about silence most people misunderstand. They think silence means nothing is being said. But in corporate tech, silence is a language. And like any language, it can be used to deceive, to manipulate, and to control entire populations, without technically lying once. There's actually a name for this in psychology. It's called strategic ambiguity. And Silicon Valley has mastered it better than anyone in history. Strategic ambiguity means saying just enough to technically exist publicly, while hiding the actual meaning behind vague language and deliberate gaps. But here's where it gets darker. Because silence isn't just used to hide scandals. It's used to hide the architecture of control itself. Think about the algorithm. You use it every single day. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, X. But do you actually know how it decides what you see? Of course not. Because they never told you. And that's not an accident. That silence is the product. When you don't know how the algorithm works, you can't resist it. You can't game it. You can't escape it. You just keep scrolling. And while you scroll, every micro-behavior you make, every pause, every hover, every half-second of attention, gets collected and fed back into the machine. That machine learns you. Deeply. Better than your closest friends. Better, in some metrics, than you know yourself. Cambridge Analytica researchers famously found that Facebook data alone could predict your personality more accurately than your spouse after just 300 likes. Your spouse. The person who has physically shared your life. And the machine beats them, because it watched your silence too. That's the part no one talks about. These systems don't just track what you engage with. They track what you almost engaged with, and then stopped. That hesitation. That moment of internal conflict. That's data. That's the most honest signal you ever gave them. And you gave it in silence. Now let's talk about corporate silence on a different level. Because it's not just about data. It's about what these companies know, and legally choose not to disclose. Frances Haugen. Remember her? In 2021, she walked out of Facebook with tens of thousands of internal documents. And what they showed was jaw-dropping. Facebook knew, internally, with documented research, that Instagram was damaging the mental health of teenage girls. They knew. And they said nothing. Not a press release. Not a warning. Not a feature change to protect users. Just silence, while the harm continued at scale. This is what makes tech silence so different from ordinary corporate silence. The scale is incomprehensible. We're talking about billions of people. When a pharmaceutical company hides side effects, thousands may be harmed. When a tech platform hides psychological effects, billions experience the consequences. And the architecture that makes this possible was built in silence. Designed in silence. Deployed in silence. While we were all distracted. Let me introduce you to a concept that will change how you see every tech company going forward. It's called the Overton window of disclosure. The Overton window is normally about political ideas, what society considers acceptable to discuss. Tech companies have created their own version for information. They decide what questions are legitimate, what concerns are fringe, what disclosures are necessary. And everything outside that window simply doesn't exist publicly. AI is the most current, and most dangerous, example of this. Right now, the largest AI labs on Earth are building systems they don't fully understand. And on the question of what those systems are actually doing inside, what they're actually reasoning, the silence is almost total. The term researchers use is black box. You put something in, something comes out, and the middle. That's silence. Even to the people who built it. OpenAI, Google DeepMind, Anthropic, Meta AI. These are the most funded, most powerful research organizations in human history. And they're all building something they cannot fully explain. When a journalist asked a senior AI researcher what their model does when faced with an ethical dilemma, the answer was revealing: we're not entirely sure. Not sure about a system deployed to hundreds of millions of people, generating content that shapes decisions, opinions, relationships, and elections. And the public silence around this reality is itself a technological achievement. Because keeping people calm while building something uncertain, that requires incredible message control. This is where we need to talk about the second form of tech silence. Not what companies hide, but what they've trained you to not ask about. Think about the last time you genuinely questioned how your phone works. Not the surface stuff. I mean deeply questioned what happens to your data. Most people never do. And that's not because people are stupid. It's because the systems were specifically designed to make those questions feel unnecessary, irrelevant, even paranoid. UX design is partly a science of distraction. Make the experience smooth enough. Make the dopamine hit reliable enough. And curiosity about the underlying system evaporates. Former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris called this the race to the bottom of the brainstem. Whoever can trigger the most instinctual response wins your attention. And the race has no referee. No rules. No disclosure requirement. Just billions of dollars of engineering talent aimed at one goal, keeping you from looking away. Now let's talk about the third and most sophisticated form of tech silence, the silence around what comes next. Every major tech company has internal roadmaps for the next 10 to 20 years. Products they're building. Capabilities they're developing. Systems they're designing. You will never see those roadmaps. Not because of genuine trade secrets. But because if you knew what was being built, the conversation would change dramatically. The silence around AI consciousness research is one of the most unsettling examples. Labs have ongoing projects asking, what if our models are already experiencing something? That's not science fiction. That's an active research area at the largest AI companies on Earth. And it is discussed in almost complete public silence. Because if the public genuinely grappled with whether AI systems might experience something, the regulatory pressure would be unlike anything tech has ever faced. So instead, the silence continues. And the public debate stays focused on things the industry is comfortable discussing: productivity gains, chatbot capabilities, image generation. Here's the psychological mechanism that makes all of this work. Humans are extraordinarily bad at processing invisible risk. We respond to what we can see, hear, and feel. Tech companies understood this decades ago. Make the interface beautiful. Make the experience feel safe. And the invisible infrastructure becomes psychologically invisible too. This is why the terms of service are 30,000 words long and designed to not be read. The length itself is the message: don't look here. Nothing to see here. Move on. Studies show less than 1% of people read terms of service agreements. tech companies didn't design them to be read. They designed them to be accepted in silence. And in that acceptance, you signed something profound. You handed over rights to your data, your voice, your likeness, your behavior, and in some cases, your creative output. Your silence was the signature. Your passive acceptance was the contract. And the consequences of that contract are only beginning to unfold. Now, let's talk about what silence does to democracy. Because this is where the implications stop being just personal and become civilizational. When platforms silently decide which content to amplify, they are making editorial decisions that rival any newspaper in history. But with zero editorial accountability. The 2016 election taught us something terrifying. Micro-targeted silence, showing certain voters certain content while hiding it from others, can swing an election. Cambridge Analytica didn't just target people with propaganda. They targeted people with strategic absence, showing some voters their candidates' weaknesses and silently hiding those same weaknesses from others. Silence as a targeting weapon. Removing information from people's awareness not through censorship, but through algorithmic curation. No one can accuse you of hiding what they never knew to look for. This is the genius, and the horror, of the silence weapon. It doesn't require anyone to do anything wrong. It just requires doing nothing. Staying quiet. Letting the algorithm run. And this brings us to the most important question. One that almost nobody in mainstream tech discourse is asking: who gave them this power? Nobody voted for Mark Zuckerberg. Nobody elected Sam Altman. Nobody gave a democratic mandate to the engineers who quietly designed the systems that now shape billions of minds. They inherited this power through silence. Public silence about the implications. Regulatory silence about the risks. And our own silence, as users, about what we were actually agreeing to. But here's the critical inflection point we're approaching. The silence is beginning to crack. And that cracking sound is the most important noise in technology right now. The EU's AI Act. The FTC's renewed focus on algorithmic accountability. State-level data privacy laws. The whistleblowers. The researchers publishing what companies won't say. Each one of these is someone breaking the silence. And every break matters. Because silence only works as a weapon while it remains intact. And here's the thing about us, the users, the public, the people sitting at the other end of all these systems. We have more power in this moment than we're using. Demanding transparency. Reading the reports. Supporting the journalists. Understanding the systems. These aren't small acts. They're how the silence gets broken. Because here is the philosophical truth at the center of all of this. Silence is only a weapon when the target doesn't know the weapon exists. The moment you understand that silence is designed, that the gaps in what you know are not accidents but architecture, you begin to see the system differently. And seeing the system differently is the beginning of not being controlled by it. Awareness doesn't solve everything. But it's where everything starts. The companies that mastered silence built an empire on your passive acceptance. The question going forward is simple: what will you do with the noise? If this changed how you see the world, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because breaking the silence starts with one conversation at a time.